This is the Livin It Podcast, featuring the CEO of the Richmond Flying Squirrels, Todd Parney Parnell. After 30-plus years in minor league baseball, he knows a few things.
Remember, I'm a product of the North Carolina public school system, Anthony. We're 48th in the country, but we won't even talk about that.
And a few people.
It's not name-dropping if you actually know the person. Like I was telling Tiger Woods the other day that I don't think is name-dropping.
Now he's telling all, unfiltered.
I used to go absolutely ape.
From the Reckless Kelly tour bus to the Sandbridge Bar and NASCAR tailgates.
1, 2, Earnhardt 4.
He's always living it. Here's the host of the Livin It Podcast, Anthony Opperman.
Well, hello, Squirrels Nation, and welcome back to the Livin It Podcast. I'm Anthony Opperman. He's the CEO of the Richmond Flying Squirrels, the one, the only Todd Parney Parnell.
Boy, I brought this whole episode in with a yawn. That was great, huh? Anthony's doing this awesome opening. I'm like, ugh. Sorry about that. I'm really pumped up for this episode. I apologize.
I also always neglect to mention, I always say CEO of the Flying Squirrels. I always neglect to mention also the president of the Montgomery Biscuits. I don't want to take take that away from you either.
I haven't physically been there in over a year. So.
Well, that's the result of pandemic times. But I know
I have to remember to call Brendan after this because he's called me twice today. And he gets a little chippy when I don't call him back because I'm always here in Richmond. So I need to make sure I do that.
Well, we're thinking about you down there, BP, Murph,
Brendan.
Walker. Yeah, Kenny. Yeah, we're thinking about you guys. And speaking of, that extended community, big guy. Today's episode is it's called 24/7, 365. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And that more specifically relates to community impacts.
Right.
And, we've talked about, building the Flying Squirrels brand. And we're going to talk more about building the brand, coming up in future podcasts. But, especially for this brand and this organization, the community impacts, you just have to look at our three pillars, right? Mm-hmm. Be impactful, be different, have fun. And I really did want to focus on that first one, be impactful. Why is that right at the top, and why is community impact so important?
Well, because that's one of the ways that you're different, right? And that's the way you have fun. It's a culmination of all those things. And I think that an organization comes into a city like Richmond, and we're going to be a baseball team, but I think we have to be much more than that. I think that we're our goal was to be a community impactor before anything, and hopefully people know us as that now. Last year's a good example. We didn't play one inning of baseball, but we were still out there doing everything we could during COVID, everything we could during a worldwide pandemic to impact the community in a positive way. So, that's more than anything what I want us to be remembered for. Is that we impact people, we impact community, and baseball gives us that platform. No offense to anyone else. We're a small business, just like there are thousands of small businesses in the Richmond region, but we have a platform where we can do more good things for people, and so we have to do that. And, a lot of that ends up into some contradictory things sometimes, but first and foremost, that's what we have to do. And I think that makes, if you do the right thing by people, people will do the right thing by you.
So you've had the opportunity.
Is that a Parneyism?
I don't know, but we could. Well, it's not about your education in North Carolina. It's not about name dropping. So I don't know if we could count it as Parneyism, but it was actually really philosophical.
Yeah.
It's the evolution of Parneyisms
I'm just
here.
like that Plato kid. He was a philosopher, right? Plato?
Yeah. He wrote a couple of books.
Yeah.
He's known for a few things. You have worked in different markets. You've had the opportunity to, obviously, in a long career in minor league baseball, see how operations run at other markets. What is it about the Flying Squirrels in Richmond that's so different, that, the impact in this community, why does it just hit differently here?
Well, I'm pausing because Chris Shaw just texted me, and that's always distracting when the legendary Chris Shaw texts you. Hi, Shaw.
Former Flying Squirrels player, yeah.
I love me some Chris Shaw.
Yeah.
But I'm pausing because I think the real reason to that here in Richmond is because we're the second relationship. You know, the region and the Braves were married for 42 years, and they had a wonderful run, and they had a great relationship, but then they got divorced. And then we came in, and we're the new thing, right? And we could be anything that we wanted to be. And I think the number one thing we wanted to be was to be impactful. And not that the Richmond Braves weren't. They obviously were. But we put baseball in the background. And we put community impact into the foreground, and that was so different that I think that people really embrace. At first, well, you remember you were sitting right here next to me with the card table, right in this room. At first it took some getting used to for those people, for the community, but then once everybody kind of had like an aha moment a little bit, right? And it was one of the most wonderful things I've ever experienced personally. Just saying yes to people, saying we'll do that, and just have them be like, wait, what, you're going to drive 75 minutes to speak to 15 people in a Kiwanis club? Well, yes, we're going to do that because you're going to fall in love with our team. And, you never know. Like, it gets back to, my childhood of growing up in the church. And I'm not saying this to be like over philosophical or over spiritual or anything, but you
came out of the gates pretty hot with that one, so you might as well keep rolling with it.
But they said that when Jesus would go to preach, where 2 or 3 are gathered, like I've literally said that sometimes to groups I'll go to speak, because everybody's always so kind and nice and apologetic. Hey, I'm sorry, we only have 14 people in this group. And I'll literally say, well, 2 or 3 people were good enough for Jesus. It's good enough for Parney, right? And I just think that that's important, like the connectivity with people. I just said this yesterday to someone. Every interaction counts. Every meeting counts. Every conversation counts. Earlier in my career, I met somebody, and I won't say the person's name because the person they're talking to is like worldwide famous, and that person didn't like the worldwide famous person. And I said, why not? I know this person. It's a great person, good person. And they said, well, because I saw them one time and I was like 30 feet away from them, and they said something that I didn't agree with and I didn't like. So every time you're in public and every time, it all matters, I guess is what I'm saying. And I'm saying that because that all goes into community. That's why, like, I can't go out in public in Richmond and have a bad moment, have a bad day, because I represent this. And this is really important. So I think that all, that goes into 24/7, 365. People always make fun of me for always dressing the way I do. And there's a lot of organizations in minor league baseball that, after games, when you go out to bars, are like, take off your logo. And I'm like, keep your logo on. Make sure you have your logo on. Make sure you're telling people about the games. Make sure you're being nice to people. Like, make sure you have your logo on, because that brand is part of you, and more importantly, you make that brand. Mm-hmm. Intertwining each other.
So, but that philosophy, that way of approaching minor league baseball, that just didn't start here. Like, that was stuff that you had seen in other places. So, kind of where for you in your career, where were some of the most influential places where you're like, this place does it right in terms of getting out in the community and doing the things that they need to do to represent and connect with people in the community?
Well, Reading. I mean, it all for me started in Reading when, once again, I'll state I was the second choice of Chuck Domino. Chuck Domino wanted to hire Marty Owens before me, but Marty went back to Wichita, so therefore, if I can get that in every episode, I'll be pretty happy with myself. But
that and Reckless Kelly references, which sadly we've not done a very good job with. Sorry to interrupt your train of thought.
That's okay. But Chuck had come from Idaho Falls, in Pocatello, Idaho. I'd like to say hi to all my fishing buddies out in Idaho, by the way, TC and crew.
Speaking of Reckless Kelly.
Yeah, there you go. But, I feel like because of that small town environment Chuck came from, he brought that to Reading, and we just did all kinds of stuff. And the being fun, being different, that really was rooted in the philosophies of the Reading Phillies and the things that Chuck himself brought forward to my attention when I was 22, 23, 24 years old. He's also the person that pushed me out on the main stage. Chucky preferred to be behind the scenes counting the money and not being out in public. And so that was my job. And because that was my job, I got really adept at the community activities and being a part of all these community things. And, you work on Saturdays, you work on Sundays, people might think this is silly, and some people might think that it's unhealthy, but, going to the grocery store, you might be working. The cash register person that checks you out might know that you work for the Flying Squirrels, so you better be ready to say something positive about the Flying Squirrels. So it is 24/7, 365, which creates a lot of blurred lines, when it comes to family and other things, which, we've talked about on other episodes. I've tried to work on that throughout my later adult life. But I don't think there's anything wrong with representing your brand all the time.
But there is still a time, like there's only so many hours in the day, right? Like 24 of them to be exact. And I mean, just you look at some of the numbers, like for example, Nutsy has been a huge part of building the Flying Squirrels brand in the community. And we've talked before on other episodes, this philosophy of start at yes and work backward, figure out a way. If somebody wants Nutsy there, find a way. So how do you manage the demand? And Nutsy, 500 appearances a year. I mean, you can do the math, 365 days in a year. I mean, that's more than an appearance a day,
right,
for Nutsy, and some of these are further distances. So how do you manage that as a staff to make sure you're meeting that demand and you're doing what you want to do in terms of impacting the community, but you're also making sure people kind of stay fresh and engaged and don't get completely burnt out by it?
I mean, that's tough, right? Like I've failed at that in my career a few times, more than a few times probably. But that's why it's so important to me now, because I see, when you're saying yes to someone, you're saying no to something else or someone else. And there's especially here in Richmond, not that there's not in Montgomery or other places I've worked, but especially here in Richmond, we're so sought after. And there's like a conviction amongst the staff to make sure that we make that happen, So I think I've probably gone the other way the last few years to make sure that people are that fresh. I mean, you're a prime example. I mean, I pretty much have to push you out of the office. But even you have found things, just like I have, found certain things that make your brain relax. For me, it's Sandbridge. For you, it's chasing things at the beach. By things, I mean shells. I don't mean anything inappropriate. And we both have our own little thing. That's speaking for myself. That's done me worlds of good, and I think it's done you worlds of good too. So I think caring enough about people around you to make sure that they're finding those little things, and it needs to be little things that aren't detrimental to your health.
Right. Right.
So I think that's one thing. And then just, making sure that you're part of the process, like me. I don't want you to be doing all those things. I want to be pitching in to help with concessions for the VCU games. I want other staff members to see that and know. I guess, this goes way back into the very beginning of my career. Back in those days, there was 5 or 6 front office people, and we all did everything. That sounds like the old person saying, I used to walk up the hill, 10 miles uphill with no shoes on, but you had to do everything. And so that's sometimes, and you've seen it, Herbie, sometimes when I'm like, no, there is no such thing as it's not my job, because everything is our job. We have, as we become bigger, we have more defined roles, but being a part of the community is everybody's job. being impactful in the community is everybody's job. Being well liked in the community is everybody. If you think about it, we've never really had anybody that we would get phone calls and say this person's misbehaving in the community, or this person's doing this, or this person's doing that. And that's because we generally attract good people that put others before themselves. And that's a culture thing. Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent.
No, without a doubt. I mean, it's 100%. And there are certain types of people, right? Like, I mean, that is a certain type of personality, right? Like to want to and be willing and open to say it's a Saturday and I'm going to go out to a little league with Nutsy over worrying about your plans for your weekend. Like, right. I mean, there's certain people that they're called to that, and there's certain people that are not. I mean, we talked about leaders being made, not born, but to a degree, if you have this service mindset, like that is something you just kind of have to have, right?
I mean, others before self. I hear Rhodesy name drop.
Mike Rhodes, VCU head basketball coach.
Rhodesy talks about it all the time. I texted with him before sunrise this morning, like others before self, others before self. And I think when you're in the sports world, even if you don't have that mentality, you're going to need it, because what do people like, Oppo? They like sports, and what brings a community together better than anything? Sports and entertainment. That's what brings communities together. So I think you have to be able to put the community out in front of everything, and individually, and also collectively, as a fan base. I think that's really, really important.
I mentioned that Nutsy does over 500 appearances in a normal calendar year. Obviously, 2020 and beyond has been anything but normal. Are you at all surprised? Like, does it take you aback a little bit that, this whole thing that started from nothing, literally at a folding table in the middle of this clubhouse?
Yeah. Like literally right over there.
When literally the unpainted portions of the wall that still have the Braves red and blue on them.
Joe T, we need those lockers over here.
But do you ever take a step back and be like, this is crazy, like that this mascot has become a rock star in this community? I argue he's like the face of Richmond. I mean, he's the most recognizable face, in my opinion, in Richmond, Virginia. And it literally came from nothing. It did not exist just a little over a decade ago. And now he's out there doing 500 appearances a year with Natasha by his side too. I mean, to me, it's crazy. It is wild.
It's a few things. Number one, it's a testament to the courage that we all had to name a team the Flying Squirrels. Right. That takes courage. I remember being scared to death, we'll say. I was scared the night before. So I think that's one thing. The second thing is just the commitment of people that aren't even here anymore. The countless number of appearances people have made in the community, people that have gone on to many great things, not in Richmond and otherwise. It's just kind of, we do what we do in the community, and everybody kind of recognizes that, and that's a lot of joy and pride put into that. And then thirdly, it takes two to tango, Anthony, and this community was ready to tango. This community wanted to be loved. This community didn't look, like I said before, it was a divorce. The Braves left to go to Gwinnett. It struck me when we got here how many fans of ours would be quick to point out that we were like doubling the attendance of the Gwinnett Braves because they were jilted, right? And now we're the new relationship, and we love them so much and still do, and they embraced us with that love. So I think that those things as a combo have all been in the mixing bowl for the success, and more importantly for the impact that we've had. I mean, that's where the secret potion is made.
So why do you think Nutsy became so popular so quickly? I mean, cool looking mascot, superhero, all that kind of stuff. But why do you think he became so popular, and why the staying power, you think?
Well, because do you remember when we unveiled Nutsy, James Ferrier was there sitting in front of us. You were probably backstage somewhere, but I was.
I think I was sitting to the side of the stage wearing a feather boa, but that was a different time.
and you probably had confetti too, most likely.
There was a lot of confetti that day.
You and John Laser always had confetti, always
confetti,
more confetti. But I think the town was ready for it, and like James Ferrier was playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers at the time, UVA grad, local guy from Etoka. I mean, we always seemed to have that little extra bit of flair, and that flair sparked up this big flame in the beginning that everybody attracted. Everybody wanted some of that heat, right? Mm-hmm. And then Nutsy gave people something. We hadn't played a game yet, so they could touch Nutsy. They could see Nutsy. Minor league baseball, necessarily the players aren't the faces of the franchise, because hopefully they're going to go to the big leagues like Brandon Crawford did after the first year. But Nutsy became instantaneously the face of the franchise. And the thing about Nutsy is the name is great. It appeals. The name made Nutsy appeal to people of all ages, whether you were 1 or 101. People want to get their picture taken with Nutsy. People just want to yell, Nutsy! Like people yell Nutsy. And in some cases, isn't about me, but that's one of the reasons why people love yelling Parney across the parking lot. Hopefully they're not mad at me, but they love yelling. So it's as simple as that sounds. The name had a lot to do with it too, because the name is excitable. The name has energy to it. The name is yellable. Like it's marketable. And so I think that's something. But to me, the bottom line for Nutsy being so popular is people wanted something to be they wanted something to be popular, and Nutsy and the Squirrels ended up being what was popular.
But I do think it also goes back to, I think Nutsy and his popularity goes back to this notion of 24/7, 365, because we did start at Yes when it came to getting Nutsy out in the community. And, when it came to people wanting a piece of Nutsy, we said yes. He was there. He was out there. He was in parades. He was at Little League opening days, all these festivals and events. I mean, and I think you're right. I think you made a good point at the beginning. It's a testament to all those people that were here that first year, and then those next couple of years that helped to commit to that, because that's a commitment.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a significant commitment to be willing to do that.
Well, I remember us having conversations about, staffing and how physically, I don't know I guess we can tell secrets on a podcast, right?
Yeah, let's share some secrets.
We had 3 Nutsy costumes at one point, because we needed to send people out in different directions.
We still do.
Right. Is it 3 now?
Yeah.
I didn't remember how many we had.
Man, technically, we could probably piece together a 4th.
Yeah. So there's Saturdays where Nutsy does 12, 13, 14 appearances in one day, right?
And works a game.
So that Anthony's right. It's an organizational wide commitment to saying yes, to starting at yes, and working backwards from there. And I think that if you're going to be successful here, you have to have that mindset. And that mindset goes deeper than just that. It goes even to your own performance.
Yeah, and like we said, those are the things that you got to kind of be born with. You just have to. It has to be part of your personality, right? You have to be willing to embrace that once you work here. But the other thing, big guy, that I've kind of come to appreciate about it, and again along the lines of that community impact, it's so special, right? When you get out there and you have the opportunity to see it. And it's really easy when, you're stuck inside the cinder block walls to kind of miss out on some of that connection. But when you are out with Nutsy, yep, or you are at an event behind a table that says Flying Squirrels, people react differently, right? That's special. It really is special.
More than any place I've ever worked. We say this to interns when they come in. Like, you're going to be a local celebrity because you're an intern with the Flying Squirrels. A little bit of an exaggeration, but it's going to matter to people that see you up the street that you have the Squirrels logo on. And I think that's just the people of Richmond have made it that way. They've treated us that way, and therefore we have to work that much harder to make sure that we're giving them more than that love back to them, right? But I also think, like, minor league baseball is such a special thing in communities. Minor league baseball touches people in so many different ways, people of all ages. You know, when we moved here, Anthony, in 2009 as a group, all of us, did I ever think there would be people buried, with a Squirrels logo ball in their hand, or I think of Tut, our dear beloved Tut. He would have been so proud that we put a jersey with his last name next to his coffin, which, by the way, he was a World War II veteran, by the way. It just means so much to people. And then I'll also go back to 2019, which, by the way, seems like light years ago, the way the whole community embraced All-Star Week. Even if you didn't come to the game, you were proud that the Squirrels were hosting All-Star Week. And then the day that we drew over 400,000, that very last game, I probably had, I lost count, but probably 24 or more people came up to me and said, I saw you on TV last night. You said we needed 6,000 people to get to 400,000. So I changed my schedule and came out here so we could get to 400,000 for the season. That doesn't happen everywhere, like that makes it special. And that's what we've missed. Welcome to the crying part of the show. That's what we missed during COVID. Like, we missed that passion. We missed that togetherness. This isn't about an organization. It's certainly not about a person. It's not about a front office staff. This is about a community that's come together in such a way. It just is special. It doesn't happen for us. That's why I get kind of fired up when people want to bring up the ballpark all the time. That ballpark will not be about a ballpark. It's going to be about all of us doing what we do together. Now, do we need it? Heck yeah, we need it. We needed it 12 years ago. But I get a little ticked off when people want to talk about that all the time instead of talking about the 500 appearances and the 120 charitable. Talk about that stuff, because the ballpark is going to be beautiful and wonderful and much needed, but that's not what I want us to be remembered for. I want us to be remembered for what we do in the community and what we do for people and how we make people better and have better lives, and even bring people closer together. Like we bring families closer together because of what we do, and that's what minor league baseball does all across the country. Look, I grew up. This is a tangent. I grew up in a close family, but my dad and I talked about sports. Mm-hmm. That's it.
I'm with you. That's the same thing with my dad and I. Like if there was one thing we could ever talk about all the time, it was baseball.
And I think it's just like the movie Field of Dreams, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's what gives us the opportunity to be so impactful, and it's not really an opportunity in my mind more than it is a responsibility. And I think that's the framing of that and where that goes in your priorities kind of establishes who you become.
So when you put yourself out there, as this organization did at the very beginning, when you say you're going to start it, yes, and avail yourself and be so present, people will start to take you up on your offer, right? And you become more and more in demand. As a business person, how do you manage trying to be there for the community and give what you can while also still making sure that you're not giving away everything and you still have product to sell, that you're not just giving everything over?
I think that there's, through the years, there's probably a something that goes off in your head, or maybe you learn it. I don't know. But there's people that need help and there's people that want help. Mm-hmm. And there's a difference. The people that need help, you really have to do that. Mm-hmm. The people that want help, you want to do it. You always want to say yes, but I think there's a difference. I mean, just like when when you ask somebody to do something, either you can't or you won't. Like if you can't, that's okay. Mm-hmm. But if you won't, WONT, that's another thing, right? So I think it's kind of the same. And for us, not that we prioritize our impact in the community, but if it's about kids and if it's about helping families at a very core level, that's our sweet spot, right? And if it's connected to baseball, that gives us a platform. That's why Flying Squirrels Charities has always been what it has been. But I don't want that to sound like I think that some people take advantage of us, because I don't. I think people have been great here, but I just think that there's different levels of need, right? And I think that when there's a really, really deep level of need, that in some cases are life or death, you just have to drop everything.
Well, and then there too, I think it's probably the process of, and this is one thing I certainly learned, from you or in the early years, is there are some people who will make requests that we can't fulfill from a practicality standpoint, from a business standpoint, but you just continue the conversation and find out what else, right? Like you figure out, well, what else could we help you with? Would this offers those solutions, right? Like, would this be valuable to you? Could this be of assistance? And keep working the process. Right.
And you'll get to a point with everyone where there's some type of good, right? Like the old story, everybody, is somebody called after hearing me speak and hearing me say, start at yes and go backwards. And then I'd also told in that same speech that we just put $100,000 into our new infield. This was our first or second year.
Yeah.
And then the next 2 days later, I got a phone call from a guy who wanted to use our field. Wait for it. For a tractor pull fundraiser. Right? So I was like, Domino always loved it when I had these predicaments. Start at yes and go backwards from there. And, but to your point, we talked through that. You can always talk through situations so that something good comes out of it if people are asking you something. So no, we couldn't, and I forget what we did for those folks, but we couldn't do a tractor pull in our field, but I'm sure we could donate something they could raffle off, or we could do this with our players to come to their event. There's always something that you can figure it out. You just gotta, being impactful in the community a lot of times is just like putting together a big puzzle, right? Like you got to figure out what pieces you have and where they would best fit into the whole community, and figure it out that way. But yeah, so there have been shall we say, precarious situations that we've had to overcome because it's just not possible. Like you can't have a tractor pull on a baseball field.
You brought up the players there, and I think that's often a popular request, right? Of having players out in the community. I guess it's worth reiterating a little bit that, our situation in that regard is somewhat unique in the sense that, our players aren't always readily available. And by the way, they also have jobs too. So, how do we strike that balance of player involvement with the fact that they're also in the business of trying to get to the big leagues?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen that change throughout the last 33 years. Number one, back in the day, teams didn't really treat players as good as they do now.
Yeah.
Like I'd throw a player in my car and we go to a little league field and I'd say thank you at the end. Well, no, you need to do something to take care of the player and thank them, whether it's coupons or certificates or money or whatever. And that's been learned through the years. But I also think that one of the things that people misunderstand in regards to the players is the lack of time that they actually have.
Right.
So we're in the locker room right now, everybody, and if we were playing at 6:30 tonight, I don't want to give away what time we're filming, but there's usually players here at like 11 o'clock in the morning, getting treatment or sitting in the cold tub or lifting weights. And then there'll be people here two hours after the game, hour and a half after the game, hour after the game. So the players are literally here 12 hours a day in some cases. So that makes it more difficult. But I will say here, Anthony, in particular, in Richmond, we've always had a group of players that if you said, hey, so-and-so, we're going to go do this at the hospital, we're going to go do this at the Little League, will you go with me? They would always do it.
I think you'd mentioned you'd received a text from Chris Shaw. I mean, he strikes me as he's one of those guys, right?
Yeah, and he's just so daggone good looking too. Like Chris Shaw, you're a beautiful human being, but I think like I met his parents when he was here, and like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And this locker room is such an eclectic place. People from literally all over the world, and everybody from different backgrounds. So one of the things we ask them in the questionnaire that they all get when they get here is, like, do you have a cause in your family? Do you have an organization? Maybe you had a cousin that had a certain disease, or maybe one of your parents unfortunately succumbed to cancer, or whatever it might be.
Well, and Chris Shaw's was the ALS Association
because of Pete
Freitas, right, with Boston College,
right, and so. And that's I think that's how the whole Ice Bucket Challenge started here, right? Through that, or there was some connection.
There had been a relationship with ALS before, but it got heightened when Chris got here. Right. Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, so I think that those things are always and honestly, I too think that that's part of the growth for the player. Like the Giants want them to get to the big leagues on the field. I think we can actually help them off the field. When you're a big leaguer in one of these big cities in America, there's going to be a lot of organizations clamoring for your time and your money and your likeness. And here in Richmond, we're big enough of a deal that they get a little bit of experience in doing that, and I think that's good too.
Well, big guys, we near the end of another podcast episode, and I really love talking about. We
haven't gotten canceled yet?
Not yet. We're on episode 5. Well, to be determined whether or not this one ever makes the air. So we'll see. Okay. We're recording it, but doesn't necessarily mean it'll air. No, just kidding. It'll be out there.
Please, Nick, let us do this.
Like and subscribe. We'll get to that in a second, though. You're this big gregarious personality, as we talked about a bunch, and you're always so giving of your time and being willing to be out there in the community. How do you make sure that other people who are doing some work behind the scenes don't get overshadowed, or that they feel that calling too to be out there just as much as you, and it's not, oh, well, Parney's got it, or, well, they really want Parney, I'm just going to stay back here in the background?
That's an amazing question, because I've spent a lot of time thinking about that and struggling with that through the time here in Richmond. Like, I love what I do. I love being the face of the franchise, but I also share that with a lot of other people. People that aren't here anymore, and people that are still here. So a few things. Number one, I like, if I'm on the radio, you can barely ever hear a Wes McElroy show. And I know there's 8 people that listen to that, Wes McElroy. 8 people listen to your show, Wes McElroy, without me talking about a teammate. Anthony Opperman's working on a promotional schedule, or Ben Rothrock's working on the travel for the season, or Caroline Phipps is doing social media, or Garrett Irwin's rearranging our entire seat structure. Like I think physically, or Hannah's doing the food truck festival out front. Calling people out personally and giving them publicity when I'm doing my job as the face of the franchise is one way that I've handled it. And then just pushing people out there. I'll bring Wes up. And as you know, Wes and I are great friends. Wes McElroy, 910 The Fan. Wes McElroy, 910 The Fan, 12 to 3, middays with McElroy. And he texted the other day about coming on the show after the governor made his announcement. And I said, well, how about Ben? We'll bring Ben too. So bringing people along is naming people, bringing them along. And then the third one, you're not going to expect this, making myself a little scarcer. Old Parney would apologize for going to the seventh inning stretch as much as I do now. But there's going to be Saturdays when CBS 6 wants me to do a show for them, and I can't because I'm in Sandbridge getting my mind right, And so I think there's people that can step in. I think there's people that want to step in. And even further, I think that my teammates that love me like you have seen what joy that place has brought to me and my family that you want to jump in.
Right.
So I think that those things all mix. But that has been something that's really bothered me. Again, I'm this big gregarious guy, and everybody thinks I love the attention. And, okay, I do love the attention. But I don't want to overshadow anybody, and I've always wanted to try to push people out there. But, but there's sometimes when the matchup is important, right?
Right.
And there's certain things like later today, I'm going to do some videos that need to be heard from this face and this mouth. So, but whenever I can, I'll bring people with me, and I love bringing people with me to my speaking engagements too. Because I think that helps. Like when people see how people react to, when our staff members see how people react to the pants or whatever it is, that kind of gets them even more connected to who we are.
Yep. It's a community thing, just like going out with Nutsy, right? Like,
right.
It's the same thing.
I mean, you go out with Nutsy, man. I mean, it's like Ripley's Believe It or Not type stuff. Like how people just, like they go crazy over seeing a squirrel.
They don't care about your pants.
No, they don't care about. No, they don't care about that, and that's great. I mean, to your point earlier in this show, like the level of celebrity that mascot has obtained is crazy.
It's unbelievable.
And I mean, there's been some parents that have told me that their child's first word isn't dada or mama, it's nut. Or nutsy, and when kids go up and down Arthur Ashe Boulevard in their baby seats, they're not saying let's go to a Squirrels game. They're saying nutty, nutsy. I mean but Anthony, that's all a part of the community impact, and that's all part of the hard work that we do that has nothing to do with the baseball game.
Well, and I absolutely, along those lines, want to give a shout out too, because we've got a part-time crew. Like everybody, I think, always wants to know like who's Nutsy, and we always say, well, Nutsy is Nutsy. Yeah. Like it's, you don't know who's. I mean, you got to reveal. It's got to keep some things, internal there, right? But it is a team. It's not just one person; it's a team of people, and that work to build that brand and do all of those appearances. And they're a very dedicated group of individuals. Like, and I've had an opportunity to work a little bit more closely with them over the last couple of years, and they are so passionate about it. They love it so much, and it shows. I think that's part of it. And we talked about like there's a certain type of individual who has that calling, who appreciates that and responds to it and feeds off of it. And so really appreciate, that crew, that team that we have with those performers that get out there in the community and they do the dozens of appearances. Yes, they get paid for it, but quite frankly, that's not why. That's not the motivation, without a doubt. And then they'll come back through the office at the end of the night and high five everybody and give everybody fist bumps and stuff. And I can't tell you how many text messages I've gotten from that group that have said, we miss it so much. Yeah. We can't wait to get back.
I can't tell you how many, talk about the group of people you're talking about right now. I can't tell you how many Major League GMs, how many Major League Scouts, how many Major League whatever executives and other executives from other teams, major sponsors will be in Parney's pub after the game. You hear it because you're doing your post game stuff, listening to all the shenanigans that go on in there. But they always come into my office and give me a fist bump or a handshake. And after a hot summer game, they've been through it.
Yep.
And so they'll walk out, and the person, from the big leagues will look at me and I'll be like, that's our mascot crew. And they'll always say, they come in and say good night to you, but that's the culture.
Yep.
And it's not because of us, it's because of them. That crew of people have the mentality that they want to be part of something like this so much that they go around and they fist bump everybody. And trust me, like never before since the pandemic do I feel like a simple fist bump says, I love you, I appreciate you in so many different ways now. I won't ever take that for granted again. So keep on doing it when we come back to playing. I want y'all to come into Parney's Pub and give me a fist bump.
I don't think that's going to be a problem. I really don't. Well, big guy, it's been a special conversation, and
they're all special. Anthony.
They are special. They are. And we ended usually the same way.
I'm like 4 episodes without cursing. Nick's going to be really proud of me too.
You caught yourself earlier too, and I really appreciated that. But make sure to subscribe: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, YouTube. We are all out there, all everywhere, and then also share it too.
Yeah, please do, because we want this. We're having a ball, Anthony and I. We want this to be as big as it possibly can. And more than anything, we want someone to get something out of it. Look, I don't have all the answers. Anthony asks all the right questions. But if you just get a chuckle out of this, or if you get something that might be able to help you in your professional walk or your personal walk of life, that's what it's all about, and that's why we're doing it.
Until next time, big guy, have fun.
Go nuts. Have fun, go nuts.